What we want to do today, friends, is the journey that God has brought you on and that you're on right now. And the promises that He has made and the promises that He's fulfilled in your life. We want to talk about some of those today because there's people out there who have needs just like yours and who need the same promises that God has brought about in your life. So let's kind of begin with just talking about Frank and Randy. So tell me about how long you've been married and where you met.
Well, we've been married for 26 years, and we met in Plainfield, New Jersey.
In New Jersey?
Yes. I was getting ready to go to college to play football, and my mentality was of that of Dick Butkus. I went to school to play football, and going to college just happened to be a part of it.
There you go.
And I went to New Jersey to visit my family, and that's where I met Randy.
And were you at the college where he was going?
No, actually I was home for my summer break, and my girlfriend said, gee, I have someone that I think you'd like, that I think you'd get along just fine. You two would make a nice couple. So I said, oh, okay, I've heard that before.
Right.
I said, well, okay, let's give this a try. And I met him, and it's history from that point on. Great history.
Love at first sight?
Love at first sight, but more friendship.
It's a great way to start.
Friendship and compatibility that developed into a deep love.
Amen. Now, talk a little bit about your professional lives, if you would, please. First of all, Randy, tell me what it is you do right now.
I'm a flight attendant. I've been a flight attendant for 30 years, and as a result, I've traveled to many places around the world.
Wonderful.
Met some interesting people.
Yes, very interesting. Realizing that the common bond between people, all people need to be valued, need to be loved, and everyone can communicate regardless of race, color, or creed, or the language barrier through a smile.
Well, you got a beautiful smile, so you must communicate a lot wherever you go. Frank, how about you? What's been your professional life?
Well, I built ships since I was 19 years old. I worked in the shipyard. I worked on just about every nuclear-powered Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, from the Nimitz itself all the way up to the George Bush. And I spent most of my life in the shipyard, and before I got saved, I had the mouth to prove it. But and then I transitioned from that into presently just serving God.
Now, I know part of your story of how you came to faith, so just kind of bring that out, how that you came to know Christ.
Well, I was working in the shipyard at the time, and we had just bought a brand new home, a home that we had $100 a month left after everything was said and done. Well, needless to say, we didn't stay in that budget very long. And so a co-worker of mine came into my office, and he was talking to another co-worker about God. So I followed him out of the office and asked him, some questions about this God, because I had been reading about tithing, and I didn't understand anything about that. So anyway, he invited me to his church, where his wife had put on this church play. It was the largest church in the city, and she directed it and wrote it. And so I was just going to get in good with him because he was a successful supervisor. I'd seen him in the neighborhood. He had a nice car. His wife was smiling, and he had a very well-paying job. So I wanted to know what he knew.
Sure.
And so I went to the church just to go there. I invited another couple of friends just to go because he invited me. And God grabbed my heart. And the pastor I thought it was an awesome play, and after the pastor made the altar call, I like to say I got up and ran down to the front, but that's not true. Actually, he did it 4 times, and because I said, God, if he says it one more time, I'll go. Because I was worried about what people would think, especially my friends.
Isn't that something? Worried about what people think, and the important thing was what God thought and what He thought about you, and what the plans He had for you. So you opened your heart to Christ.
Absolutely.
And Randy, were you a believer at that time?
I was a believer, yes. I was raised a Roman Catholic, so some people would say not a believer in the sense of, say, other faiths as far as Christianity is concerned. But I was raised Roman Catholic, and I always had a deep love for the Lord. I knew the Lord on a personal level, and I was lucky enough to have been mentored and taught by nuns who loved Jesus. So I knew Jesus at an early age.
Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Frank, so when Christ came in your life, a great change took place, I understand.
Yes. Actually, it took place that night because after we left the church, when the play was over, the friends I invited, they were non-Christians too. So we went to the local restaurant, and everybody, like we customarily do, ordered drinks. But that night, I couldn't order a drink. I had no taste for a drink because I had read somewhere where in the Bible, and I don't remember where, but I know it said, don't be drunk. So I figured out, by the time I figured out when I was drunk, it would be too late, so I just quit drinking. So that was the first thing that God did in my life immediately.
Isn't that amazing?
It was.
So that was a great change, huh, Randy?
Yes, great change.
Great change. Well, so just little by little things start happening. Now, I know that something in that early time of Christ coming in your heart, things about tithing. Now, tell me where you heard that word and how that kind of first came up in your life.
I read it in a book. I mean, you know, when you're broke and you're struggling, you're looking for all sorts of answers. All sorts of answers. And I saw this little booklet, and I read it, and it talked about this man who, the flood came to the town, and everybody else's land flooded but his. And so because of that, his crops went up 4 times the price, and he made all sorts of money, and it was because he tithed. And he told his son, you know, he could never not tithe. And so I wanted to know about this quote-unquote tithing thing. And so when I first got saved, one of the things that I was asking questions about was tithing and how does it work? Because we had an $800 a month deficit at the time.
Wow. So, and this is a few years ago, and today, a lot of folks are just dealing with just budget crunch and challenging times, and a more month left at the end of their money, and that's kind of what yours was. And so the interesting thing about it is, you know, the opinion out there today about God and church and money, that's kind of a big subject.
Yes.
But that was kind of a drawing factor for you. So one of the big changes in your life, not only your vocabulary and losing the desire to drink, but you were interested in what God had to say about your everyday life and finances.
Yes.
And that started you on a journey, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Let's talk about that journey.
Well, first thing I read, I think it was Pastor Price out in California, was first time I'd ever heard it watching this program. He said God had a financial plan. And I never heard that before. You know, I grew up in a Baptist church, and when I got old enough not to go, I didn't. But I never heard God had a financial plan. So I started trying to find out more about this financial plan. My pastor, which was my first pastor that I joined the church on my own, and I wanted to be there, he was a vice president of a major bank in New York, and he was retired, and he had just opened up this new church. And it was about 100 people, so I thought, I have it made. You know, this guy's a banker and a pastor too. I've got it made. Yeah. And so I wanted to find out more about it. Then I talked to him about this tithing. And then I talked to my friend who led me to Christ about tithing, and they both took hours to explain this thing to me. And so one day I sat in my office, and I was just sitting there with all the bills in front of me. I said, God, how can I tithe? I have an $800 a month deficit.
Right.
And so the Lord led me to Psalms 50:15. Now, this is a miracle because I don't know anything about the Bible.
Okay, Psalms 50:15.
And it says this: call upon the Lord in your time of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you will give me the glory. That's why I'm here today.
Wow.